Panchgra, who's on the team here, will let them in. So just before we get started, David, the reason we're using Zoom is just to make it a little bit easier, but David's going to record the session. So I suppose, I hope that's okay for everybody. Okay, so good morning. My name is Dave Hackett. I'm the Managing Director of a partner of Tableau. That partner is called the Information Lab. And so we operate here in Ireland to help our customers to design a better data experience. And in 2019, Salesforce acquired Tableau and brought it into the Salesforce family as their data visualization and data reporting tool. And it's been great for us because we got to work with the team within Salesforce. And so it was their encouragement to create this webinar to help give guidance to small and medium-sized enterprises on how that they can incorporate best practices and the reasons for incorporating data visualization reporting into their business and how to go about it. So I hope to be able to pass on a couple of tips today about how we help our customers to design a better data experience and how you can do the same thing. And we're going to speak to Niall Glynn from Adriatic Travel and Croatia Tours, and Niall is the owner of that business. And so, as the owner of a business, fully understands the challenges we face with data, and then also has benefited from moving towards data analysis within the business. So he has a couple of very interesting stories to share as we go through. So I'll just move on here. This is the Salesforce team that we're now working with. We're really happy to work with. We've been really impressed by the level of knowledge they have of their own products and then their customers' requirements. And so it really has been a very good working with them in 2020, and we'll be working very closely with them going forward. Thank you to Nick Harrison for helping arrange the webinar, and also to Tom Delaney for all the work that you put in. So the Information Lab, how do we design a better data experience? Before we kind of get into data visualization and data analytics, I thought we'd just have a quick touch on business in general, right? So when we talk about knowledge in business and for small to medium-sized enterprises, we're talking about people who really understand their business. These are businesses who have, up to 10 employees, up to 50 employees, up to 249 employees. And arguably that's the tougher end of business to be at, where you have to make so many decisions on your own. We are exactly the same in the Information Lab. There's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, and I suppose you don't have the support that an enterprise organization has. And so, business owners really do understand their business, and therefore there almost is a hesitancy to embrace data analytics within an organization, which I understand. If I fully know my numbers in the business, why do I need to bring in data analysis? And what's that going to do for me if I know my cash balance, I know my revenue, and I know my cost? David, could you help me? David Panchgra? Thanks a million. Sorry, we're just trying to mute people as they come in so they don't interrupt in the presentation. So looking then at kind of how do we go about designing data visualization and designing a data analytics experience for small to medium-sized business? Well, I thought these questions were relevant, right? So what do I need to know to run my business? Okay, so I know my revenue, I know my costs, I know my cash in my bank, I know my headcount. Okay, but what would I like to know? Okay, well, I wouldn't mind knowing website traffic yesterday. I wouldn't mind knowing, what our forecasts are for the rest of the year. Yeah, and I'd like to know what I already know on a more frequent basis. So maybe I only get monthly reports or quarterly reports or annual reports. But what would it be like if I got those reports daily, right? So I still understand my business, but now I'm getting a daily refresh, okay? Or what would happen if I could know all aspects of the business? And then I kind of came to a point which I thought was interesting, is like, what would I like other people to know? How come the small to medium-sized business owner knows everything about the business, but maybe that knowledge is not shared around the business? So with data visualization and data analytics, we can share and distribute the knowledge. And then the last question was, what would I like other people to discover? Like when you're running your own business, you're finding out things that go wrong, and you want to fix those things. But wouldn't it be great if other people found out or discovered insights that didn't depend that reliance on you, right? So in speaking to business owners like myself, I very much understand the questions we ask within our business, but I really feel that data analysis and visualization can help. So if we look at 2020, it was a very interesting year because of what happened with the pandemic with regards to data visualization. We had this concept of a global pandemic, which most of us knew, very little about. And we had to kind of understand the modeling or the impact that it was likely to have on our behaviors, right? So there was models created within London. There was pharmaceutical companies went to work straight away in creating a vaccine. But in the meantime, we had to kind of understand information about this global pandemic. And for the most part, none of us had even heard of COVID-19 before 2020. So bar charts and line charts started to appear, and they started to go to the front page of newspapers and magazines. They started to appear across all forms of digital media. And a little bit by little, we began to understand what was happening. We understood the number of cases per day. We understood where the cases were likely to go unless behaviors changed. And decisions were made, right? At government level, they were made globally. They were made by leaders of organizations based on these charts. So the job of data visualization was done, right? And the job of data visualization is to help you to influence other people with complex information, but doing it in a really easy to understand way, hence the bar chart or the line chart. So whether we agree or disagree with the decisions that were made by leaders at government or organization level around the world, one thing that I think is for sure is that data visualization has changed forever. And what it's actually done is made some of our own reporting, whether that's to our employees on our team or whether it's to our customers, it's going to force us to step up a gear, right? We're going to be expected to deliver bar charts and line charts, simple data visualization, easy to understand. And an opportunity in this for, I think, all businesses is the ability, when you know your business so well, to deliver insights in a really clear way to your customers. First and foremost, it's really, really sticky, right? If you're delivering information and knowledge to your customers to help them to perform better in the business decisions they make, they're going to stay with you, right? So you're going to get that loyalty. And then there's a second part to it, which is, well, can we generate revenue from providing insights to our customers? You absolutely can. But I just thought it was quite interesting because we didn't expect data visualization to go to the prominence that it has in 2020, but of course it has now, and it's not going back. So just to touch on two of the trends that we're seeing in business at the moment, obviously we're seeing automation. You don't need me to tell you that. We're wondering, how can we spend less time exporting data, doing calculations in spreadsheets? Can we automate tax preparation, payroll, all different parts of our business? And then the other aspect of business that's happening is we're taking on board more applications, aren't we? Like much more software solutions. So that example could be Tableau, or it might be CRM like Salesforce, but we're taking on applications that create data. So we're taking on more data. Data visualization is becoming more popular, and automation is becoming more popular because people want to spend their time doing the exciting stuff like the data analysis instead of doing the hard work in the spreadsheets. So when we talk to our customers, and I'm just going to touch on this briefly before we go over to Niall, I just wanted to give you an insight into how our customers frame their data journey. And that was kind of the purpose of this presentation today. So we do it over 5 areas, and you can do this yourselves. So if you think about your strategy, within your business. You can think about, well, am I really using data as a part of my strategy? Am I making decisions that are supported by data? And that's kind of halfway there. Or am I actually becoming quite data driven? And I am making decisions in my business to use data as a competitive edge. So I'm going to bring in data from other sources and around my business. I'm going to enable all my people on my team, and we're going to start using data to drive our business forward, right? So that's using it as a strategy, and you can score yourself 1 to 5 on that. Governance is a really interesting one that I would never have thought about in my own business. But governance is quite interesting because if we can put security and permissions into the data that we give to different people. So say, for example, I'm working here with Tom Delaney today and Niall Glynn, and I'm looking at a country map of revenue, but I only want Tom to look at Dublin and say Niall to look at Cork. You can embed those permissions within the data visualization so individuals can see what they're supposed to see. But if we harness that governance, it also means we can distribute data sets from all the knowledge in our business, in our Excel spreadsheets, from the different operating systems we have, and give that to our employees and let them analyze it. So governance is quite interesting in that respect. And again, you can score yourself 1 to 5. Skills is really interesting. And I'm going to give an example of a couple of these questions now shortly. But skills is, are people in our business aware of the tools, right? And let's be honest, like, do they know how to use data analytic tools and data visualization tools? And are we supporting them actually, right? And I think you're going to see that a lot more in organizations where your employees are coming to you and they're going to expect you to deliver training or support for them as they go about trying to onboard new data visualization tools like Tableau. The next one then is community. What you'll find as you start to go down your data journey is that teams break out of their silos and they start to talk to each other and they start to share information, and they're asking each other about how do we build that dashboard, or how did you build this, and a kind of a data community tends to form quite quickly within your organization. And if you don't have one today, and that's fully understandable, just be aware of it. It's the same as any of these kind of 5 pillars. Just be aware that if you don't have one, you don't, but maybe it's something that you could look to grow over the next 12 or 18 months. And then the technology. And I think Niall's going to add quite a bit to this. How do we structure our data in a way that we can analyze it? And we want dashboards to perform, and we want dashboards to be in the hands of other people around the business. Okay, so they're the 5 pillars we look at. When we give it a score, we think about it in terms of a kind of a personality, right? So level 1 for each of those 5 is being siloed data teams, okay? And we're all very familiar with that. There's data that sits within teams in finance. There's data in teams in HR, data with teams in operations, data in teams on sales, and no one sharing their information, right? So siloed data teams, we all know that well. Partial data integration, we're starting to see people move out of those silos and starting to share information around the business, kind of representing a bit more of a desire to kind of create that data community, which is that next step. That data community then is when you're starting to hear and see people talking about data within their business. And then we've got the data supported business, right? Where we're expecting people to come into meetings with data, and then we're going to make decisions on the back of that data, and we're going to go forward. And then you've got the level 5, the data driven business. And that is, we expect everyone to be proficient at data analysis within our organization. We are going to harness data and use it as a competitive advantage. We're going to deliver insights to our customers and make sure they're sticky. Like, data is just a core value driver within the business. And the good news, and I'm kind of happy to share with you, is that everyone's on different levels across those 5 pillars. I suppose if you were to look at an Airbnb or maybe a Google, or those that have been built on data, they're going to come in as a data-driven business across all of the 5 pillars. But you can, rest assured that every organization that we work with in Ireland is at various different levels across the 5 pillars. And what they're doing is they're trying to get to the next journey. So if you could imagine that score across the 5 pillars. And so within each one, we're just trying to move forward onto the next step. And that's how you bring all 5 pillars up to becoming that data-driven business. So here's a couple of questions that I just thought I'd ask you, right? But we're not going to have a kind of a Q&A, but maybe at the end we can talk about them. But it kind of gives you an idea about how the questions that we ask our customers, okay? So how often do you use data in decision making? Are there clear teams defined, or do you work alone? How often does your team use data to inform their decisions? Do you rely on data for your business decisions? And do you have established data leadership within an organization? So I'll just leave that there with you for a second to have a think about. But when the purpose of the webinar is to help people with their data journey. These are the questions that we ask when we're working with teams and organizations. So you're well able to take that away, and if you want any follow-up on it, you can let us know. This is a good one, right? And skills are incredibly important in data analytics. It's going to be the most in-demand skill by 2025 professionally, an analytical mindset. Right, so here's some questions you could ask yourself about your business, right? Have you received any prior or current training on any kind of data prep or visualization tools? Have you been asked to provide training or guidance? How often do you use data preparation or visualization tools? And do the team members have access to training materials or sessions? Okay, so I put them in there with a couple of examples of the answers here, just to give you an idea of how you can frame your own current position, and then how maybe you can think about moving on to the next level. Okay, so just before we speak to Niall, we're just going to talk a little bit about data design strategy, and it's really very briefly, because we could talk about this all day. But it always starts with a business question, regardless of the side of the business. Like, what's your need? Okay, so what problem are we solving? We want to understand our cost base. We want to understand our cash flow. What's your need? Okay, and our job really is to listen to that, and then listen to the different people within your business and understand that, and then understand the blocks or the challenges, or what's stopping it from working, or what could be done better. And then we reframe it, and I'm going to give you a little tip about that now. And then we start to imagine, and really that's the best bit. Instead of having a kind of a mind that's closed to it, and of course none of us have, because we're interested in new ideas, but we're trying to imagine, well, if I had that information earlier, or if I had that information, or if those people could help me with their analysis. That's the imagination section. And then the believe bit is when we typically would send a proposal to our customers, and then we execute against that. But there's absolutely no reason that you can't do this yourselves. And that's the approach that we take. And we really enjoy it because it just brings so many ideas to the surface. So again, when we think about it, it's what do I need to know? What would I like to know? What would I like others to know? And what would I like others to discover, right? So very, very practical. And we frame the answers, right? That's the reframe bit. So we've listened to your need. Okay, we understand, and now we reframe it. And this is a handy tool. Your data analysis requirements are going to fall into 4 areas. They're going to be in preparing data, designing data, exploring data, or scaling data. Okay, so when you look at your project that you're about to undertake, think about prepare. What data do I need to connect to? What calculations do I need to do? Think about design. How do I design a dashboard or display the key metrics? Think about explore. How do I help other people to analyze that data set? And then scale. How do I share these tools around the organization so they too have that same? So that brings me to introducing Niall from Croatia Tours, which I'm going to do now. So Niall Glynn is the owner of Adriatic Travel. Croatia Tours is part of Adriatic Travel. And it's a family-run business, an Irish family-run business that's been trading for just over 30 years. And it consists of a number of different companies, and they supply faith-based travel to around Europe, Israel, and the Middle East. And Niall is a small business owner, just like the rest of us, or part of a small business, just like the rest of us. So he understands the challenges that we face with data. And so we're going to kind of go back and forth between myself and himself here, just to touch on the challenges he's faced with his data, some of the ideas he's designed, and how he uses data visualization within his organization. I should also say at this stage that Niall is a customer of Salesforce and uses it, but we're going to touch on that now. So Niall, first of all, thanks very much for being part of the webinar.
Thanks for having me, Dave. Hopefully I can help in some way.
We normally would hand over the presentation, but I kind of wanted to ask you questions today because I'm very interested in what you've done, and I think we can kind of hopefully share with other people some of the challenges that you've faced in your data journey. Okay, so would you mind maybe introducing just a little bit about the systems and the data that exist in your business, and then we'll move on after that.
Yeah, no problem. Originally, we started, as I said, kind of in the previous slide, we started about maybe kind of 30 to 35 years ago. So we were dealing in the 1990s, where obviously technology has moved on considerably, as we all know. We were dealing with old kind of legacy operating systems. We were dealing with a huge, big VAX COBOL system, which ultimately kind of took in all our actual major data, like our booking data. We used that system all the way up until pretty much, we're still using parts of it. And we used it up until probably around 2000, 2005, when we obviously realized that we needed to develop our systems and obviously trying to extract that data as much as possible. We then moved, obviously, we developed systems towards creating kind of flat files and exporting them into SQL, and then taking the data out of those legacy systems and then trying to obviously use that data to either actually put a sales skin on top of it, or else obviously analyze that data as much as possible. We then moved in towards Salesforce to deal with our CRM and our content management systems. And then after that, then obviously the next step was obviously to start using Tableau, and using Tableau then to extract as much data as possible from those systems that we developed, and obviously analyzing them in different ways and different means through the dashboards that we can kind of talk about now.
Okay, thank you. Before I suppose we jump into that, I just wanted to chat to you a little bit about, when you talk about like a legacy operating system and you talk about Salesforce, they're the systems, right? But the data that you have, like, what are we talking? Are we talking about bookings? Are we talking about like what data is going into those systems?
You're looking at everything pretty much from, back in the 1990s, or even actually prior to that, actually, the company that is originally founded here was started off by my father with a larger company back in the 1970s. So pretty much you're looking at like all the data that would run the company would be going into these legacy systems. And to be honest with you, some of it still is. Because that's just unfortunately the nature of the aviation industry, that we have to obviously deal with these old legacy systems. You're looking at booking information. You're looking at obviously customer information. You're looking at the real boring stuff that ultimately that we run our whole systems off. All financials, all payments, all revenue, all invoicing, outgoing and incoming. They were all being pumped through this system. So all that data needed to be obviously taken out, extracted, and obviously used.
Okay, thank you. And I think what you've then done is you've taken extract from the legacy operating system, and you've put that into a SQL database, which of course Tableau sits directly on top of.
Exactly. And then so we take it out of the SQL database, and then ultimately Tableau, we were taking that SQL database and then trying to obviously, we were developing our own systems, or simply taking out of SQL and actually putting it into Excel. That was pre-Tableau. So.
Okay, and so like any other business, really, there's probably a big lean on Excel to do the reporting and the data prep in the business. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. A lot of actually kind of the financials were done through Excel because it was easy to do. A lot of the people that obviously that were doing the financial reporting knew how to use Excel. A lot of this comes down to, as yourself and everybody knows, is ultimately got through the skill sets that you have within obviously the organization. So when you talk about Excel spreadsheets, everybody generally will know how to use them. So therefore, we were extracting data from a very, very highly visual tool like SQL back into Excel, because ultimately they were the skill sets that our team would have had.
Okay, very good. It's the same in every business. So we started working together then and looking at some of your own needs. And this is dummy data that we've used, but it represents one of the dashboards that we have. As much as we'd like to be showing customers cash flow, it's not suitable for webinars. So we've had to take the dummy data to build the exact same dashboard. But this is a dashboard that Niall is using. It is a dashboard that you can expect to use and build very simply within Tableau. And I suppose all of us are already looking at, the height of the bars, the arrows, and we're starting to kind of come up with kind of information. And like, I wonder why that's bigger than the other, or why is that, bar kind of smaller than another. And that's exactly the point of data visualization. But can I ask you now, how has cash flow reporting and cash reporting then changed for you in the business then since we've brought in Tableau?
Yeah, massively. I mean, ultimately, the big thing with us was, as we were kind of discussing there, a lot of it was done through SQL. So prior to Tableau, we were looking at a situation where we were pretty much kind of doing monthly, quarterly, probably annual revenue, cash flow. You're trying to basically give yourself as much information into a business as possible, however, without killing a department. In other words, they'd have to do this the whole time. What you would normally have to do is, you'd have to normally, as we all do, you'd have to extract the data, we'd have to set a point in time, the guys go off, obviously produce the reports that I've asked them to produce, and then ultimately then they'd obviously show it to me on Excel, and we'd have them obviously running pretty much every quarter. I try and kind of get every month if I could out of them. It was always a bit of a battle. This situation now at the moment is ultimately everything is automated. Everything is obviously working obviously in real time if I wanted to. And then ultimately a big thing for us now at the moment is with our different divisions and our different offices, like I now can show the financials very, very quickly and easily to Boston without producing an actual Boston report. Or, it's a big issue for us because ultimately, a lot of the company, like the financials, don't need to be given to different obviously offices. And I would have had to produce 5, 6, 7 reports, whereas now I can just basically give access to Boston depending on obviously what data I need to give them. So it's a huge.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So it saved a lot of time, right?
Yeah, massive. I mean, a lot of it's not even actually time. A lot of it's got to do with actually headcount. So, you've got a situation where people can start working like this, as we all know, this is the boring stuff that needs to be done. I can now put obviously a bit of time and effort myself rather than actually having to do a cash flow analysis or actually, look at my revenue sales. I know that I can see that on a daily basis and I can actually start, talking with the sexy stuff, the actual stuff, the strategy, the whatever I need to do, that kind of, a lot more that using data that I like using data for, knowing, what to do with it rather than having to keep on obviously producing the same reports day in, day out. That's the big issue for me.
Okay, and it lends itself to move into the next aspect where we can obviously take data from I know you're a Salesforce user. Would you mind touching a little bit just on that, and then how we were able to take that data into Tableau?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately we moved from, as I said, the old kind of systems back in the 1990s. We kept on obviously kind of pushing forward as much as possible. And then really a lot of our business is dealt with in relation to our groups, our group travel. So what we do is we actually ultimately, we would deal with a lot of obviously parishes, churches, religious organizations throughout the world. So it's a group based industry. Therefore, obviously Salesforce was the standard. It was an obvious fit. They deal completely with our CRM. So all our actual customer relationship stuff, all our group analysis is actually done through obviously Tableau, but it's taken, the data input is obviously taken through obviously Salesforce. Salesforce will also, we've developed a system within Salesforce, they'll deal with our content management. So again, it doesn't necessarily feed that heavily into Tableau, but it definitely the likes of obviously all the accountants or the accounts and all the CRM solutions will actually go through Salesforce and then into Tableau to show obviously the reporting from there. And just gives me a kind of a greater insight into relation to obviously what the staff are up to. And again, from an actual office or a division perspective, we can give different information to different places as much as we want.
Yeah, so one of the things that we've noticed is that obviously Salesforce position themselves as giving you that 360-degree view of your customer, right, which is incredibly important. And what I suppose I'm finding with Tableau is that it's helping with the reporting of that 360 view, because you can tailor the reports, bring in and out different pieces of information from within Salesforce. And also there's the data quality management, right? So, helping find if there's any duplications or anomalies within the system. So I'm glad to hear that integration has worked out well. It's something we're seeing a lot more of. Now, this is the regulatory reporting bit that I appreciate that if you wouldn't mind giving a bit of context around, I suppose, the commission maybe, and what it means to you to have bookings on flights, breaking even on flights, and also the flight status. And then maybe we can, talk about Tableau then.
Yeah, I mean, our big thing at the moment, obviously being the industry that we're in, we're in maybe kind of 4 or 5 different jurisdictions. The biggest one that we would be in is through Ireland and the UK. All travel industry is pretty much, except for outside the US or inside the US, is pretty much heavily regulated. So we have a situation that we need to be bonded. We're either bonded by the governments that ultimately, the likes of the Commission for Aviation in Ireland or the ATOL bonding in the UK, or we're bonded by the credit card companies, the merchant services. So ultimately the situation is when I take somebody's money, I'm taking deposit for their flight. I haven't actually given the service until the person actually comes back from their actual, their travel or their holiday. So we need to be regulated in that regard. Because of that, ultimately then a lot of obviously the regulatory requirements involves reporting on a quarterly, a 6-month basis or a yearly basis to receive either our licensing or the merchant services that we actually require from the credit card companies. The big problem that we're hitting into, well, we're not anymore, we were hitting into is producing these reports. They were time consuming, extremely time consuming. So the problem was got to do with is you're ultimately spending 2 to 3 months prior to getting your license application in. You were spending 2 to 3, 4 months obviously putting this data together, and then you were really starting it again as soon as you got your license. So we were putting men and women on it pretty much constantly in all the different jurisdictions. Now the situation is it's pretty much automated. We can send it directly to the departments or the regulatory bodies as soon as we want to. And to be honest with you, a big thing with us has got to do with is, as we all know in regulatory requirements, it's got to do with perception. If it's a situation that I can give this data quickly, easily, in a nice format, the lads think I'm brilliant. So at the end of the day, it gives me a better, relationship with the regulatory bodies, which is a huge issue for us. So ultimately, that's where it's kind of coming from.
We see that in quite a lot of the financial bodies as well. Like it's hard to imagine just how much work goes into regulatory reporting.
Yes.
It's a huge burden. So if you can automate that, I suppose, and to your point, then, if you look good, right, you're demonstrating that you're on top of what, which is ultimately what they're trying to say. Do you know where you are? Do you know where you're going to be? And so it probably gives them confidence, right?
Yeah, but I mean, the big thing is ultimately got to do is yourself. I mean, they're a lot of the time, ultimately, a lot of the bodies will be pretty much kind of trying to safeguard the customer or safeguard, obviously, safeguard the industry itself. So if they can feel, look, these guys they have all the data at their fingertips. They're looking at it just comes down to it shows financial stability if you can give them obviously pure reporting on a daily basis. Prior to this 1990s, to be honest with you, there was many a time that ultimately I'd be hiding under my desk because I would have written one of the actual regulatory reports in the back of a beer mat because I just didn't have the time to do it. Now it's a completely different story that actually they're seeing you as pretty much kind of like one of the, the best in class kind of scenario, and they're giving you kind of a bit of a kudos for that. So it definitely helps.
No, that's great. Thank you. This is the last one we're going to touch on, but and I've used dummy data, but this is essentially your business, right? In terms part of your business, and that you're selling commercial flights, seats on flights, and you obviously want to understand if you can break even or that on those flights.
Of course, yeah. I mean, really, this is what I believe ultimately Tableau gives is this stuff here. It's really the kind of the sexy stuff. It's the data that obviously that we've always tried to get. It's the other stuff prior to this, the financials, the regulatory stuff is automation. It's quite boring, but it needs to be done. This stuff is really the help. This is where I would actually use the data to try and obviously analyze and strategize in relation to obviously where I'm going to bring the company or bring the business on a weekly or a yearly basis. Our big metric at the moment is ultimately, guys, you can maybe you can or can't understand, it's simply got to do with is obviously how quickly a flight is filling or how quickly a tour will be filling. So if I can get that rate of fill, I know exactly what I need to do with it. So that pushes into my strategy, it pushes into my marketing, it pushes into obviously everything I need to do on the web. So ultimately, if I can get all that data, visualize it, and then obviously show it to the general managers and divisions, then I can go forward a lot quicker with it.
I think it's fascinating. Like for us, we're in a very nice position to be able to understand your business by working with you. But all businesses are very interesting in terms of, fundamentally how do they make their money. I like this dashboard because it's essentially it gives you a good insight into how the business is performing and enables you to make decisions, right? And that's what we're trying to get to. We're trying to get to a place where life's just a little bit easier, that we're on top of our data and we can make fully informed decisions. And
yeah, I think a big thing as well with this, obviously, this dashboard as well has got to do. It's kind of something that you were touching on prior to myself, that this has evolved. Not only this is only one dashboard that we're showing, as you understand. It's evolved really into this situation where it's allowing different people within the company to realize areas that they need to be looking at, and they're showing us, well, what about this dashboard? What about this dashboard? What if we combine these two pieces of data together? Which has really helped in the last, obviously, 3 to 4 years in relation to obviously seeing and having a greater insight and visibility into obviously where the company is going.
And it's interesting you say that. We're noticing it in businesses, like it's a cultural thing. So like as soon as somebody sees a dashboard that makes sense to them, there's that desire to see more dashboards, and then they start asking more questions, and then they want more dashboards. It's a very positive impact on culture, and it can be exciting, right? To take the monotony out of that preparation in Excel, and then ask people their opinions on the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Niall, thanks a million. It's been a pleasure to have you as part of the webinar. I hope people don't mind me asking the questions in terms of an interview format, but I have a great interest in it. I would encourage you to think about, we can share the slides here. I know the Salesforce team are going to be in touch with you over the next week, and they'll be in a position to share the slides and check in with you and see if you have an interest in taking data analysis and visualization further within your business. So you can expect a call from the team. They're fully up to date and they have the information here to distribute. I'm going to say thanks to Niall, but I'm going to pause just for a second, just to see if there's any questions and answers. But other than that, we've reached the end of the webinar besides the Q&A. Okay. I'm not seeing any questions there, but you're very welcome to get in touch. Okay, here we go. David O'Neill, thank you for your question. How important is a centralized data warehouse? I've got a couple of opinions on this, but Niall, in terms of your business, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's extremely important, but to be honest with you, realistically, sometimes for a small business, it's very hard for it to happen, but you will always strive to do it. We ended up obviously dragging everything into the likes of obviously SQL, and we use that as a central point. But I mean, it's a hard out graft, and it ultimately it's difficult enough to try and make it happen.
I think from what we would see, I'd share exactly what you just said, Niall. It's going to come down to the different data sources, right? I don't think a centralized data warehouse is essential. I think if you can connect to the source data and you can build certified, and that's important, right? So you've got different data sources. For example, on Tableau, you might have, let's say, your operational data. It doesn't necessarily have to come from a data warehouse. It can come directly from the source like Salesforce. But being certified means, you've gone in there, you've validated the information, you're saying that this is a single source of the truth. So that means if there's dashboards that depend on that data set, or if people want to go in and ask their own questions of the data, they know that they're looking at accurate data. I don't think you need a centralized data warehouse to have accurate data. But one of the things that Niall had spoken about earlier, which I thought was interesting, and it's more of a database, right? A SQL database, was that Niall was able to pull the legacy system, which is, 30 years old kind of thing, and take the information from that, put it into SQL and tidy it up, and then put Tableau on top of SQL. But that's a database, not a data warehouse. So it's nice to have a data warehouse. It can slow things up sometimes. I don't think it's critical, to answer the question. You can essentially use Tableau as a centralized data warehouse. Okay. I guess that's it, unless someone fires up another question in the chat. Maybe Niall, you and I might stay on for a minute, but everyone else, I hope you have a nice day. Thanks a million for taking the time to join us on the webinar. And I hope it was some value. So I wish you best of luck and enjoy your day.
Thanks.